if we go to war with Russia, we could find that our youth may have to be conscripted. That's a bit alarming.
Yes. Head of the British Army, one of the most cerebral thinkers that we've got, a strategist. We need to listen and listen carefully. We've been too complacent. I think I've said this many times with you. What's coming over the horizon should shock us. It should worry us, and we are not prepared. We've had a couple of decades, 3 decades or so since the Cold War. Life has gone well. It's now going to get more difficult as authoritarian states exploit our timidity, our perhaps reluctance to really put fires out. And the best example of that is a democracy on the corner of Eastern Europe that in its 3rd year is now in conflict, and we've not resolved that. So Patrick Saunders is saying, prepare for what's coming over the horizon. There is a 1939 feel to the world right now. These authoritarian states are rearming. There's a risk averseness about the West in wanting to deal with that. And institutions, global institutions such as the United Nations, aren't able to hold these errant nations to account. In fact, the UN, I'd go further, is reaching its League of Nations moment unless it's reformed. So that's where the world is heading. We need to wake up to that. There's a mindset now of this era of insecurity that we're heading towards, but we're still on a peacetime defence budget of just 2%. That does need to change. And the Red Sea is a great example that if you don't step forward, if you're not robust in dealing with those that are testing the envelope, it will be our weakness will be exploited, and it will affect our economy.
British Army chief's call to mobilize the nation in the event of war should be listened to, Tobias Ellwood says. The MP says we should listen carefully after the Daily Telegraph reported that the head of the British Army will warn the British public they will have to be called up to fight in the event of a war because the military is too small. A warning from the head of the British Army that the UK would not be prepared in the event of a war should be listened to carefully, a former defence minister has said. Tobias Ellwood told Sky News there was a 1939 feel to the world and that Britain was not equipped to deal with what is coming over the horizon. He was responding to a report in the Daily Telegraph, which said that later on Wednesday, General Sir Patrick Sanders was due to give a speech warning the British public would have to be called up to fight if the UK goes to war because the military is too small. Mr. Ellwood, who has served alongside General Sir Patrick, said he was one of the most cerebral thinkers that we've got and a strategist. We need to listen and listen carefully. We've been too complacent, Mr. Ellwood said. What's coming over the horizon should shock us. It should worry us, and we are not prepared. The MP for Bournemouth East said that following decades of post-Cold War peace there was a growing sense authoritarian states could exploit our timidity, perhaps our reluctance to really put fires out, pointing to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So Patrick Sanders is saying prepare for what's coming over the horizon. There is a 1939 feel to the world right now, he said. These authoritarian states are rearming. According to the Daily Telegraph, General Sir Patrick would not support conscription but wants the government to mobilize the nation in the event of war with Russia. He has previously been outspoken about the need to rebuild the UK's warfighting capability in the wake of Vladimir Putin's attack on Ukraine, saying Britain's combat power has been hollowed out by consecutive governments since the end of the Cold War. The Ministry of Defence declined to comment, but earlier this week, Defence Secretary Grant Shapps denied the size of the army was shrinking and said under the Conservatives, it would not dip below the current level of around 73,000. However, Mr. Ellwood said he agreed with General Sir Patrick that the army is overstretched, in part because of issues to do with pay and accommodation. He said the army, as well as the Navy, is about half the size of what it should be while the RAF is lacking the equipment it needs. In the Cold War, we had 36 fast jet squadrons, we're down to about 6 today. And that's just an illustration of just how small our armed forces are, he said. The senior MP said the defense budget needed to be up from its current level of 2% of GDP to at least 3%. The government's target is 2.5%, but Mr. Shapps told Sky News on Sunday that we're not there yet. Mr. Ellwood said that during the Cold War, defense spending was about 4%. He added, our world is no longer at peace. We're moving to a world at war. Britain absolutely has a role to play, but we need to upgrade our defense posture.